Yes, good day. It's wonderful to be here in South Africa. I'd like to express my thanks, of course. If the minister would still be there, I wanted to at least thank him for the invitation. And of course, also special thanks to Freddie for inviting me here. I really feel honored to be able to speak here. I agree in many, many ways with Adrian and also with John, who have already spoken here today, as far as education is concerned, and I really appreciate their insight and also their experience in this area. My name is Randall Greenlee, and as I've been introduced, I am the Director of International Relations and Communication at the VPLT. We just have decided to call ourselves the German Entertainment Technology Association. Actually, we used to be called, of course, the Professional Lighting and Sound Association of Germany, but we've now taken on this new name because we feel like that is a better way of defining who we are. The VPLT is, as I said, the German Entertainment Technology Association. We have around 1,100 members in Germany. They're all people that are in some way involved in the live event industry. That means manufacturers, but it also means production companies, which makes it very difficult in some ways for us as an association to truly do the work that is needed for both groups. We have distributors as well. So it's very heterogeneous and makes it sometimes difficult as far as our politics are concerned, but we do as best as we can. We also belong to the EGVW, which is a community of interest in Germany that is made up of the trade fair show building companies, also the Congress and incentive companies, the EVVC, and also the Theater Technicians Association, which is called the DTHG in Germany. Now, we call the DTHG our closest sister because a lot of what they do in the theaters, of course, has a lot to do with what we have to do in the live entertainment industry. And it's sort of growing together anyway, so we do a lot of work with them. And basically, the EGVW does represent all of the people that are working in the live entertainment technology sector. And let me tell you one thing. You may have noticed I'm an American citizen who has lived in Germany for a long time and sort of become a European and now have this job for the German Association. The Germans do realize one very important aspect, and that is that the only natural resources that Germany has are its people, because Germany does not have any other natural resources. Now, you might say beer, but as I noted last evening, the South Africans have very good beer too. So, at any rate, the Germans know this, and as you might expect, Germans organize things pretty well. So, if we look at the situation of training standards and certification, then that should lead, of course, to occupations, and there are 4 definite statutory regulated occupations in Germany that have to do with the live entertainment sector. And that is, number 1, the entertainment technology specialist, which we call the Fachkraft for Veranstaltungstechnik. And then, of course, the master of entertainment technology. And then there are also 2 statutory regulated degrees that you can get at a University of Applied Sciences and Arts. I think this is similar to what Adrian was talking about, or also John was talking about right at the end of the panel discussion, the type of university where applied sciences are very important. In other words, practical experience. And of course, you can get a Bachelor of Engineering in Entertainment Technology, or if you would go on and study another 2 years, then you can also get a Master of Engineering in Entertainment Technology. And I'll go into detail about these in my presentation. Well, training standards have a very long history in Germany. And basically, you can go back to the Zünfte, which were developed in the Middle Ages, around 1200. That was back at the time where carpenters started getting together and painters and simply saying, hey, we should form our own guild and decide ourselves what type of qualifications do our people have to have. This, for example, is a symbol for the Carpenters Guild from the Middle Ages. And so the system is really old, and it's basically set up like this. There's an apprenticeship, which young people can do if they decide to become a baker or an entertainment technology specialist. Well, they say, I'll do my apprenticeship. And after the apprenticeship, of course, and if they pass the courses and they do everything that they should do, they become a journeyman, which is what the Germans would call a Geselle. Once they have that position, they can work a couple of years longer. It sort of depends on what trade they're in, and then they can become what is called a foreman or a master. And basically, foremans and masters are also people who are supposed to be able to run their own companies. So there are a lot of different skills involved in being a master than you might have as a journeyman, all right? But how is it today? Well, basically, it's established through a democratic process in Germany, and trade associations, which also means the VPLT, they are definitely a part of that process. And I must say there are many, many participants that are involved. And I know there's been a lot said today about young people and aptitude and people that are wanting to get into the business. I do have to say one thing, though. Qualifications are very, very important. And the industry must demand qualification and skills from people who are working in it. I mean, we can look at it this way. A baker who bakes bread that's burned all the time will probably run sometime his business, into the wall, and nobody will buy bread with him anymore. But in our business, if we have a theater technician or an event technician specialist who miscalculates the weight on a truss that's flown above an audience, we're talking about maybe people dying. So we are pretty strong and pretty tough on the qualifications that have to be met to be able to carry these titles in Germany. And also, let's put one word in there too, is responsibility. And this responsibility goes all the way from the fact of what am I doing in my job, but also the question of responsibility with everybody that's working around me. So that's one of the major focuses in Germany. Now I'm going to go through this process, how it works in Germany. And like I said, this is a German example, a country that is unbelievably organized and has a very long history of vocational training. Basically, of course, the government is involved. There are two ministries that are directly involved in this vocational training and deciding what type of standards are to be set. And that's, of course, the Ministry of Education and Research is what it is in Germany, and also the Ministry of Economy and Energy. The economy part of that is, of course, the most important. They have basically decided about 20 years ago to found a public institution that's called the BIBB, the Institute for Vocational Training, and it's basically a government-supported institution that regulates and also tries to get all of the partners together. What type of standards need to be met for certain qualified jobs in the Federal Republic of Germany? Now, if we look at this, we can start off and say, well, who's a part of this process? Well, I'm going to name some of them, not all of them, the most important ones. One, of course, is the employer side. In other words, businesses. That have an interest in defining how their workers are going to be qualified. And of course, we also have the chambers of commerce. Now, they play a very important role in Germany because when it comes to the testing, they're the ones that make sure that the tests are done in the way that the BIBB says they have to be done. And then we have, for example, our sister organization, the Theater Technicians Group, the DTHG, and we also have the unions. If we have the employers, we also have to have the employee side on the table, also discussing about qualifications and certifications for these jobs. And in Germany, there's the big mother organization for all of the trade fair shows, and trade fair is a big industry in Germany, and that's called the ALMA. They also send representatives to these meetings. And of course, we're on the table as well, and my colleague Ralf Strothmann is basically almost all of his job in our association, and he is a paid employee, is to deal with these matters of education and qualification. So he goes to all these meetings and they decide what type of qualifications are necessary. Well, as I said, if we look at this, I just skipped over something I should have said. Consensus is very important, of course. In other words, all of these participants, all of these stakeholders have to decide what are the best standards for today that we need. And of course, sometimes not everybody agrees. And in that case, there are sometimes also decisions that are made that are not carried by everyone that's there. That's just the way it is. And then there's, of course, a vote, and whoever has the majority pulls, of course, the decision. Important with all of this process is to know that in this case of the entertainment technology specialist or master of entertainment technology, that all of the trainees both learn theory and practice. In other words, that's the big deal about apprenticeships. They are already working in companies and doing practical things every day, day to day. That's a very big part of the vocational training in Germany, but they also go to a school. at the same time. And basically it's set up either week-wise or 2 days a week. They leave the company and go to a training school that is also certified by the BIBB, by the federal government, that says these training facilities are certified. They have to be recertified every year. Every school has to go back to the federal government and show these are the teachers we have, these are their qualifications, this is the way our courses are run. What's good about this system is, and I think this is something that might be good for South Africa, but of course you have to get all of this these organizational questions resolved, is that the certification is recognized by everybody. In other words, if an entertainment technology specialist, a Fachkraft in Germany, goes someplace and shows his certification, then everybody knows, I know what this guy can do, and I know what kind of job he can do, and basically I know about how much he's going to be paid. Because that's a qualification that everybody not only understands, but also recognizes. But of course, only in Germany, right? And we've talked about this all the time, and I met with Andy at the International Production Meeting in London. Everybody talks about the same things. Yeah, this good system, but only in Germany. So in Great Britain, nobody knows really who an entertainment technology specialist, a Fachkraft für Veranstaltungstechnik might be, what type of qualifications he might have. So we have a lot of work to do as far as that's concerned. Let's go through the educational path quickly just so you can get an understanding of how it works. Well, basically, of course, everybody that wants to go into this line of work has to have some sort of school diploma. And it's basically from what I heard Jod saying, because I'm not real familiar with the British system, is it's that 10th grade, in other words, without the college, right? If you get a 10th grade in Germany, then you can do vocational training. You can go ahead and do the 12-year school system as well, and also go into the vocational training. It's a bit of a problem from a standpoint of people that, or let's put it this way, students that are school children that aren't quite as good in their grades are now sort of being pushed out by people that are really good in their grades. They could go to college, but instead of going to college or university, they go ahead and go into this vocational training path because they find that more interesting. So there's also some competition there within the schools. But if you do have this certificate of secondary education, you can go ahead into the vocational path, which means you have the occupational training as an apprentice, the practical experience, and you go to trade school where you learn the theory. And there's already an intermediate examination after about 1.5 years, which basically deals just with sound, lighting, rigging, and electrical engineering, the basics. In other words, after about 1.5 years, they have to go to their training facility and they have to take a quick test, as well as also what you would call basically I'm trying to think of the English word now at the moment, basically a question and answer with some of the teachers at the training facility to see how well they really know what they're doing. If they pass that, well, it goes on, of course, more occupational training as an apprentice and more trade school theory. And at some point, of course, there's a final examination, which in Germany is, of course, made of a written test, but also they have to show that they've done some sort of practical project in some company. In this case, I'm looking around here, this would be about the size of a project or a live entertainment event that could be used for a practical project. In other words, whoever's sitting over here, I know the guys are well trained, they could say, all right, I did the LETPC and I did the lighting and this is what I had to do. I had to set this up, I had to set this up, and that all has to be written down, and that's also graded as well. And if they pass through that, it takes about 3 years in Germany, then they can call themselves an entertainment technology specialist. However, and this is something that I just heard today also sort of sounding in the room, that's not the only way to do it. If you have the certificate of secondary education and you have 4.5 years of experience in the entertainment technology business, then you can automatically take the final examination. In other words, the accreditation only happens, all I have to show is that I've worked 4.5 years. Now, of course, they expect you to know this theory as well in the written test, but you don't have to take the schooling at all. If you pass the test, then you're also a Fachkraft. So we leave a lot of room for that as well, what we call informal training. I talked to Adrian about this as well, about the Erasmus project that we're also working with on the EU level. And this is about informal training and how do we gauge that? How do we find out? We all know that in the entertainment technology business, there's lots of informal training going on and a lot of people that have learned a lot just by doing. But how do we somehow gauge the qualifications that these people have? So there's an EU project working right now. We're working with the Dutch, we're working with the Swiss, Austrians are also on board, the Danish, and we also have the Liechtenstein people, so it's still a small country, but they're all working on the same project to try to find out how can we gauge informal training. So what do these people really have to know? Well, the learning content is following: event concepts, in other words, what's a corporate event, what's a rock and roll show, what's a theater presentation. And they have to know something about cost accounting as well on a small level, but at least they have to be able to add the numbers. Very important are in Germany, of course, are event safety requirements and infrastructure for all types of events. They also learn basic project management skills. One of those things that is very important in Germany is, as a entertainment technology specialist, you have to be able to set up a power grid on your own. That's one of the part of the tests. In other words, they get a amount of electrical power that's needed for this event, and they say, this is the generator you've got. We need to have a plan. How are you going to set it up? Show us how this works. Then, of course, this is probably very obvious to everybody. You have to have sound, lighting, audiovisual, and special effect praxis and theory. In other words, you have to know how all of these different things work at an event. Let's move on now to the Master of Entertainment Technology. What's the difference there? Well, basically, you have to have the Fachkraft. In other words, you have to have the Entertainment Technology Specialist certification in your pocket, or you can't even start. But once you have that, you also have to add 2 years of practical experience working as an entertainment technology specialist for some company. And if you've done that, then you can basically apply. That's the so-called accreditation process. You have to have, of course, proof through your employer of what projects you've done. You go to the Industry and Handelskammer, which is the Chamber of Commerce, and say, I want to make the master. I want to go ahead and move on this vocational path. And if you get the accreditation, then it's pretty easy. Then you only have to do a trade school theory praxis training, which usually takes about a half of a year. And then, of course, there's a final examination. You do this, by the way, while you're working. I'll be talking about that in just a couple of minutes, about how the companies deal with this. And then there's a final examination, again, a very difficult one, and where you also have to have a big practical project. And I'm talking about something that's really big. Let's say doing the lighting for the World Cup in Germany for one big show or something. And that's the type of project you have to put on the table and show that you knew how to deal with these things that you had to do at that job. And so it takes also about 3 years until you get done with that. But it's all set up, and everybody knows what we're talking about. And what do they have to know? Well, basically, business economics and marketing, because, as I said, a master should know how to run his own business. And a lot of them do. They open up production companies and hire people that are, event specialists and run their own companies. They have to know everything about the event safety requirements and regulations in Germany. And let me tell you, there are books of regulations in Germany regarding safety requirements in live events. And they also have to be able to handle complex project management. In other words, where we have lots of things going on at a very quick pace, at different venues at different times. And another thing that's very important in the last few years is, of course, event technology implementation in all the areas. That's lighting and sound. What I wanted to get at is personnel management, because we really think that is one of the most important things that somebody that is a leader in some sort of job should be able to do. How to deal with people. What do you do if somebody comes drunk to work and wants to get up on the rig? What do you do if somebody's having personal problems? And they really are. And you're under pressure. What kind of decisions do you make? Those are the type of things they also learn. And of course, they also have to know everything about the event market, Europe and also worldwide. But of course, I do need to talk about the academic path that can go through pretty quickly. As I said, there's a Bachelor of Engineering in Entertainment Technology in Germany. You also have to have the secondary school education with the extra 2 years, which is the matriculation standard in Germany. In other words, 12 years of schooling. Then you have to have 26 weeks of internship at some company. It's a little bit similar to the apprenticeship. And then you can go for a university interest diploma accreditation, and then it takes 3.5 years of study, in other words, 7 semesters, to become a Bachelor of Engineering in Entertainment Technology. Go through this, right? So that's about a similar process to the Fachkraft, but they do learn some different things. Among other things, they're very strong in mathematics, of course, because structural engineering and electrical engineering is very important. They also have to know a lot about mechanics. We're talking about people that also do a lot of stage work, in other words, stage machinery. And they also have to know everything about sound, light, and audiovisual equipment, also the event regulations and laws, safety requirements that are required in Germany. And they also have to know about technical drafting, 3D design and planning, and business economics. And they also have to write a bachelor thesis, which is in some ways very similar to the practical projects that the entertainment specialists and also the masters of event technology have to do, or entertainment technology. But the difference is it's much stronger on the theory side. I'm sure you can understand that because universities are that way. And by the way, at this point I can say my apology. I'm afraid I have to leave this afternoon because I teach at a University of Applied Sciences Arts, and I could unfortunately not change my 2 courses tomorrow. But like I said, that's a very big part of the German training system and academic system, is that we have universities of applied sciences and arts that are into the hands-on type of academia. The other thing, as I talked about, was the master. It's pretty easy to describe. Of course, you have to have a bachelor's degree, and then you can continue on with 1.5 years of study, about 3 semesters. And then you have the Masters of Engineering and Entertainment Technology. The content there is planning, of course, a specialization. That's a difference to the bachelor's. You have to specialize pretty quickly to say what you want to do, either planning and engineering design, stage machinery, things like that, or manufacturing and realization. Those are the 2 courses of study you can take, and the end of that is, of course, you have to write a master's thesis. Now, I've talked about these statutory regulated things in Germany. They seem to be pretty clear. We basically only have 4, I'm speaking in German again, 4 occupations. There are, however, non-statutory occupations that you can also learn. You'll probably realize an event operator. What is that? That's what we call the low end in entertainment technology. Basically, that's somebody that should be able to run a sound board, or somebody that should run a lighting board, somebody that may just be specified in one area. But that's okay, because that's what you need them for. You're hiring them just to run the sound. That's okay. Then, of course, as we also saw in the Backstage Academy, you can be a laser specialist, take a course if you want to work with lasers. And something very important worldwide, of course, is the rigger. In other words, you can learn just to do rigging. But this is not something that's done by the German government. I'll get to that really quick. Just like the job profession sound technician, which is maybe a little more than the event operator. It's really into everything into sound. In other words, you have to be able to really show how to set up a line array and what that really means for an event. Or another area would be pyrotechnics. In other words, pyrotechnician, obvious, a very specialized area. So for that, you can have a non-statutory certification. And there are 2 more that I need to note. And one of them is the technical expert in event safety and security that's come up about in the last 5 years, because safety and security issues have become so important in the entertainment industry. The prerequisite, of course, you have to already be a master of entertainment technology to be able to make this course and become a technical expert. And the other one is another specialized field, that's the electrical engineer for events. And those are for big events, like I said, where you've got 3 or 4 generators running and all types of electrical problems that have to be solved. What about those non-statutory occupations? Well, that's pretty easy to explain. There are different forms of certification and accreditation in Germany. One of them is very important, is that we have the statutory accident insurance system in Germany, the DGUF, and they require certain certifications. And what basically has happened is that the trade associations, I already told you about the IGVW, have gotten together with them and said, okay, we will decide what type of standards need to be kept and what kind of certifications are going to be made. So in the sense of trade associations, SARA and worldwide associations getting together and saying, this is what we need, the government doesn't know what we need in our industry. We know what we need in the industry. And if we get together with some powerful partners like the Statutory Accident Insurance, now they're powerful because they really do regulate, if somebody gets hurt somewhere, we're talking about big money. So they've got the backing of all the industries in Germany to make decisions. So we get them on our side, and we work together. And these are two things you might know. This one I only unfortunately have in German. That's another thing I always complain about, that the DGUF has almost nothing in English. But this is one of the books that we bring out with them. This is a basic book about safety at events. Now, we do have some English things, and one of them is the new SQQ2 in English that I helped also translate, that will probably be on the EGVW website very soon. And you might note the EGVW because everything that there is for free, including this SQQ2. We want everybody in the industry to be able to download it and read it and take whatever they want from it and use it. It's very important because if we take a look at this SQQ2 a little bit, it's about rigging. And it's about the level 1, 2, and 3 and what type of specifications the VPLT and the other members of the EGVW think are the best regulations to certify riggers. And among other things, John was talking about this about adults too. If you want to stay a level 3 rigger, you have to continue to come back, and you have to log in hours being a rigger. You have to show that you kept safety requirements and things like that. So it's a continual training experience, and that's the only way you can keep the certification. So if we look at the future, I'll round this up really quick because I know everybody's getting ready for lunch. I think there's going to be further specialization. At least that's what we're talking about in our association. And what that means is that, maybe there'll be an entertainment technology specialist for audiovisual, because there's so many things going on, 3D mapping, 4K, technology, we're talking about light fiber technology, things that are very specific to the AV world. So that might come around. And what we're already talking about with our partners at the BIBB is a Master of Entertainment Technology, which would mean they have to learn everything I've already talked about, but also an emphasis on sound, lighting, audiovisual, studio stage, and safety and security regulations. In other words, the safety and security regulations would replace that non-statutory technical expert, because we believe the state should have somebody that really, in other words, I'm a Master of Entertainment Technology, I take another course, have another 2 years of experience, and then I can call myself a Master of Safety and Security Regulations in the entertainment technology business. And that's something that's really becoming a very important thing, at least in Germany. Another thing I think that the future holds for us is the European certification, mutual agreements and standards. If you see us sometimes talking a lot at this conference, it's because we are always trying to find out what's Great Britain up to, what's going on, what type of mutual agreements might we reach. And I'm looking forward, also I've met some other people here from South Africa and from Australia. I'm looking forward to working with them in the future because we need world standards. I think that's something very important. At the moment in Europe we have the CEN-TC 433. That's a new entertainment technology standard. And that's something important for the European field of work, because we will probably be talking about codes of practice. In other words, what is best practice in the entertainment technology sector? And I hope we'll be getting Jim Digby in on that from the United States, the Event Safety Alliance, because he has a lot of good ideas about that. And as I already spoke to the ECFET and Erasmus European study projects, where we're talking about training and education in the entertainment technology sector. We'll be working with those as well with our European colleagues. Like I said, we need worldwide mutual agreements and standards. That's why we need trade associations that talk to each other, and we need conferences like this. Like I said, I'm very pleased to be here, and I think you're definitely on the right track. Holding a conference like this and getting people here to come and talk about these issues. And we also know that the world of entertainment technology is ever-changing, and it's also very international. That's simply a fact. And the German companies know this very well, because they're now realizing that most of the money they're making, if we're talking about profit, is done outside of Germany anymore. And last but not least, I must say this. We in Germany are looking forward also to learning from our South African colleagues. Because if there's anything I've learned from my worldwide activities in the last year and a half, it's that everybody has special solutions to some problems. And sometimes we're not aware of those. It's not like the Germans, and I know that's the way most people see the Germans. We know better about everything. That's usually the way that the Germans are dealing with other people. But I do know and also believe that we don't know everything, and most of my colleagues agree with me. So we're open to learning from everybody else. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you today. I hope I got through this pretty quick. I tried a little quick run. And thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Randall.